I only have about 500 slides to show you, and I couldn't tell the story with one less. So thanks for coming. So this is my Xref presentation from my trip last July. It did take me a while to get to this point, going through all the photography and whatnot. But I just wanted to talk about my Xref first, just kind of kick this off by the numbers. So I did some tracking of certain things while I was on my trip. And so the first, just to kind of go through this quickly and set the stage, this is not a vacation, this was a trip. And meaning like it took me a lot of time to kind of plan this out and figure where I was going. So just to kind of give you an idea of the pace at which we were moving through all the places that we went, it was pretty fast paced. We were always kind of on the move and never a moment's rest. It was 19 days, 4 countries, which includes Iceland, Finland, Norway, and Sweden, which are all cross-based flags. 10 cities, 41 travel connections, 6 planes, 7 bus rides, 7 train rides, 4 boat rides, 2 cars, and 1 cable car, and 1, anybody? It's a test. Funicular. All right, so funicular is on the list. 0 data money spent. I did the whole trip on Wi-Fi, which I think is an accomplishment. 4 different currencies, and just to kind of give you an idea, they're definitely not all the same. So Icelandic krona, we use the euro in Finland, the Norwegian krona, and the Swedish krona, and they're all different. But credit card was taken everywhere, so that was easy. I took 4,037 photos. If you count the time-lapse photography, it was 6,600. And 1,800 emails while I was gone that I ignored.
Awesome.
870 years was the oldest building that I went into. It was built originally in 1147. This is the number of steps that I took on my trip. I have my pedometer app running. 136 miles roughly, 423 flights of stairs during that as well. And this is just a random, there are 39 electric cars in this photo. That's Norway for you. All right, so here's where we're actually jump in. Because I have so many slides, just think of yourself, for those of you who are older like me, back in high school when we went to rallies and there were the giant slide shows rolling all at the same time, and they had the carousels that were all stacked, and they would just chug through slides. That's what I'm going to do today. So very first thing, obviously we live from LAX, and we got to LAX via Lyft, which is like Uber, and Lyft was a great way to get there instead of doing the whole super shuttle thing. So it was great to not have to worry, to just be a passenger. This is just a picture of my bag, and why I wanted to show this was because we traveled really light. Obviously, you kind of have to when you're moving around that much. You don't want to. We never checked a bag, and one of the things I love about my suitcase is that it says "Never stop exploring." This is WOW Airlines, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but it's big purple planes that fly through the air, really cheap, to Iceland, and they have the vomit meter printed on their barf bags, and they're really funny. They embrace their cheapness, and it was not a bad flight at all. So just to kind of give you, the first leg of the flight was from LA to Iceland. And the reason we went that way was because it was cheap. It was a great airline to fly to Sweden. I think it was about $400 a person each way. And we got a free stopover in Iceland. And we knew we were in Iceland because it was freezing in the air, but actually the weather, we had phenomenal weather the whole time, so that was a blessing. So we landed in Keflavík, which is Iceland. It's kind of the west coast peninsula of Iceland, not far from Reykjavik, which is the capital. And just kind of immediately, as soon as you get there, it's a totally different kind of place. And I know John was there with his wife a few months earlier, and they were like in sideways blowing freezing rain the whole time. And then we got there, and I was rather happy about this scene because it was just blue skies for most of the time we were there. Really blue water, just amazing. The first thing we did was stop at a grocery store and go because we had been flying all night. So we kind of bought breakfast at the grocery store. We actually lived the whole trip out of grocery stores because it's insanely expensive to buy food over there in restaurants. And we just kind of sat by this awesome old seawall and ate and tried to figure out what we were going to do first. So first place that we went, I did rent a car here. This was the only car rental that I had on the whole trip. Everything else was done either with public transportation or a friend of mine let me borrow his car in Finland. But this was kind of an interesting first stop. It's called I'll get to the next one. It's called the Bridge America Europe. And the Bridge America Europe, when you enter the bridge, you are on the Eurasian plate. And when you get to the other side of the bridge, you're on the North American plate. The plates come together and they go right through Iceland. You can kind of see Iceland superimposed right there in the middle, right under where it says "You are here." And so that's kind of interesting because I wonder how long the bridge is actually going to be there if these plates are moving. But it was just another kind of a place. I mean, it's like this in the middle of this lava flow, and you can see where the plates are separating, like they're pulling apart. And so it's just kind of a neat little side stop on the side of the road. And it looks like another planet right there, as much of Iceland actually does. You hardly ever see a tree in Iceland. They don't build stuff out of wood, because they don't have any. So it's interesting. It's like the moon or Mars or something. As we drove down the coast, so we're kind of traversing or going down the west coast along the not really beaches, but just along the shore. And you can start to see how things do grow on the lava fields in this area. And I will have a few just cool cars posted in this slideshow. This is kind of, I wouldn't say common, but there are a lot of really cool off-road type vehicles because when it snows in the winter, you can just drive wherever you want. You just get in your giant tired vehicle and just drive across the snow and hope you don't fall into that canyon I showed you a minute ago. But just thought that was kind of cool. So the first thing we did was pamper ourselves. We went to this place called the Blue Lagoon. And what's funny about the Blue Lagoon is that, first of all, architecturally, it's kind of a cool sequence as you get up close to it. You kind of go through this lava field, and you get to this kind of modern architectural building, and it's a spa. I mean, they've got these amazing pools that are geothermally heated. So Iceland basically runs off geothermal energy. And this was an accident. We were told when we were out there putting our face masks, our face rubs on, you can kind of see the people there with their white faces. This was just kind of a really cool place. They drilled down and they hit an underwater geothermal pool, and it starts shooting. They drilled down 2,000 feet, so 2 kilometers down, not 2,000 feet, but 2 kilometers down they were drilling, and they hit this, and it comes up, and they're freaking out because this used to be a pristine lava field, and now all of a sudden it's getting all this silica-based water, this calcification is happening, and then some dude who was part of the drilling team went to wash his face in the water and miraculously cured his eczema. And he saw marketing dollars pop in front of his eyes, and he turned it into this high-end resort and spa. And now you can walk up to the bar in the water and order your drinks. And they're just raking in the cash from this ecological accident. So just a few little architectural photos for those of us in this firm who say you can't do glass parapets. I just wanted to show this. And this is outside of the grounds. You can kind of walk past these really cool. And so this is 11 p.m. right here when I took this photo. So the sun is about to maybe dip below the horizon, but probably not. It just kind of stays horizontal through the sky. It's pretty cool. And you can kind of see here the calcification that's happening on the lava rock. So it actually seals the lava flow so the water doesn't soak back in. And so they're just constantly pumping new hot water in, and they're pulling it out and pushing it out into these exterior pools. We went on some pretty interesting hikes along the way, and there is a test at the end on all the places that I'll be mentioning. So make sure you memorize the names here. But this was really neat. It was a 3.5-kilometer hike up a canyon, and you can see there's no trees here. There's a little black sheep. It was so sad. It was just baying, looking for somebody to love it. But it was just walking around on there. But you can kind of get an idea of what it was like when we got up a little farther into the canyon. You can also see all the bugs in the air. It was crazy insect-ridden place. I guess you kind of got used to it. But just the geothermal activity that's just naturally coming out of the ground, like Yellowstone National Park. And you're just kind of walking up along these trails, and there's signs that say it's 100 degrees Celsius, don't touch, you'll burn the skin off your bones. But it was neat how they kind of mix, the path with getting close enough to these things to experience them. So we're walking through the steam. And then once you get to the top, it's just kind of this neat oasis that they built, and they have this boardwalk, and the farther up the boardwalk you go, the hotter it gets. So you can kind of gauge how awesome you are by how far up the trail you went to get in the hot water. So super, super hot at the top, like you couldn't even get in it, and down at the bottom it was much milder. And they had little changing partitions out there. It was super cool to get in, especially after a long hike. And you can kind of see here just overview of the scenery of what it was like to be there. After that, we kind of did the iconic waterfall tour that we could fit within a day because we were in Iceland for 3 or 4 days. And what's really neat about these is they're just flowing all the time. And so you can just stop off the side of the road and you can go experience these giant waterfalls. This is a really tall waterfall. It's kind of hard to tell how big it is here. But one of the cool things was you could actually hike behind it and go through this kind of cave-like setting in the back and watch the water just kind of flowing down. And you're getting soaked while this is happening. So it was really cool. Neat experience. The next one was Skógafoss. This is a really wide waterfall. This was really impressive, the scale. And you can kind of see up the right-hand side, if you can see. There's a bunch of little tiny people up there. And so you kind of get an idea of the scale of this place. And there's there was always these birds flying around, and you just kind of get the idea that this thing had some enormous power. And this is mostly glacier melt that's coming down. So again, really cold water in this case versus the really hot geothermal activity. So it's kind of a bipolar in nature. Just beautiful, beautiful landscapes. We actually did go to a glacier. I don't know how to say this one, so I won't try. But, I mean, if you guys have seen Interstellar, when they land on that ice planet, I mean, that's what it really looks and feels like when you're there. It was just really stark, otherworldly contrast to kind of our normal day-to-day, anything that we get to see. This is the ice right here with the like the cinder sitting on top of it. So it's just kind of melting. And just to give you an idea of how fast it melts, it's just constantly dripping and flowing. There's lots of little sinkholes happening, so you got to keep an eye on your little kids and make sure they don't go away while you're out here. We went to Reykjavik after kind of that southwestern tour. Reykjavik is kind of in the middle of the island on the west coast. And Reykjavik, it was kind of a rainy day, the day we went there, but it didn't really slow us down. Harpa is the opera house or the theater in town, and it's gorgeous. John had shown some slides here from his trip to Paris, but this was definitely a highlight on the way, and it's got this really neat honeycomb facade that's 3D on several of the faces of the building, where in other faces it's kind of a 2D version of this. And you get to look up through it and experience it when you're inside the building. And they have it even kind of built into the ceiling. So this is like over the main atrium space, and it really complex and beautiful. And the way the reflections kind of play with the light in the space after it's already gone through this kind of three-dimensional facade is really interesting. It's one of those places you go in and you can't stop looking up. And this is just the general like 2D facade that you're looking out over the marina, and you can see it just kind of invites people to interact with it and sit in it. And you can see the mullions are super deep, so you can sit in those if you wanted to. This is an example of the flat facade, and you can see kind of how it transitions on the right-hand side to the 3D facade. You can see some of the little pop-outs, but it was really neat because they worked with an artist to come up with a color scheme where they integrated the color into many panels, and this thing just kind of sparkles like a geode. You can get an idea of that colorization here. It sits right on the water. I took this picture because I just thought this was in the gift shop in the thing, and I thought of you, John. I hate dolphins because John used to be a dolphin trainer, and I just thought this was hilarious. It's a collection of cartoons, these books. Next thing, we just hit a few museums. We were just walking through Reykjavik, and this was a wonderful museum full of culture. My wife has a degree in world arts and cultures, so she was very interested in all the cultural aspects of the places that we went to visit. And so this one really featured artists and artifacts from the areas that we were visiting. And so these are mostly in and around Iceland and Reykjavik, and just kind of architecturally some kind of neat, like I thought this was kind of a neat stair detail, right, where you can't go straight across. You either go up or down. It's very ADA compliant. And so just lots and lots of artifacts and types of things on display, really weird stuff, which I mostly took these pictures for my kids because I think that they would think there's monsters that live there. And just neat sculptures. This is like a little red stone suspended in this three-dimensional lattice artwork. And this is a little display case that showed off local or culturally iconic artists. And you can see right in the middle there's Björk. She's probably the most famous person to ever come out of Iceland, along with the kings and queens. And then these books are really interesting because they actually have the entire history. These are like the sacred books of Iceland, and they're obviously in a UV protected area. But these books, I didn't catch the date on them, but like super old. Really interesting, just beautifully illustrated, gorgeous. And I just wanted to show some pictures of what it was like in Reykjavik with the buildings. I liked how playful they were with the artwork on the buildings, and how graphic it was. Like, it was just something different. You don't see that kind of thing unless you're in a big city in the U.S., but here, and this is just down some side street, and you can see they're repurposing an old bicycle as a gate to keep cars out, right? So super, like a Taco Bell, yeah. And just playful artwork on the sides of buildings all over the place. Lots of green roofs, kind of a standard thing over there. We're scared to death of them in the United States, but they're just pretty standard over there. And just kind of interesting details with like a modern balcony on a super old, well, maybe it's not an old building, but it kind of looks like an old building. This is probably the most famous church in Reykjavik, and it did not disappoint. It's beautiful. They're actually redoing. They have these hexagonal cast in place columns that are these buttresses that fly up to this thing, and they're repouring some of them. So the weather there definitely takes its toll on these buildings. But inside, it was just amazing. Super tall, Gothic feeling, really clean and barren and skeletal. And then the giant pipe organ was beautiful. This is on the test at the end, just to give you an idea of the street signage. Yeah, we're looking for that. Let's go this way. Yeah, it's hard to talk to your your digital assistant. Some more cool cars. This is a sweet Ford Expedition with 3 doors down the side. Here's a Mog, and just your typical Toyota Hilux here. Just, again, beautiful artwork to be seen all over the place. Beautiful mosaic here. And some kind of cool, just residential architecture cast in place. I mean, yeah, you suspend a cast in place wall out over nothing. Super cool. And just interesting architecture. This building looks neat from afar. It doesn't look so cool up close. But it was definitely like attractive to go find it and see what it was all about. We then went to Sweden. So that was our Iceland trip. We went from via air over to Sweden. So just to kind of give you a spatial conception of now, this was a pretty short flight, 3 hours maybe, to get over to Stockholm. We weren't actually going to Stockholm. We just had to land there to go on a boat ride to Finland. So this was we had a brief moment in Stockholm and just kind of cool sights along our quick path over to the boat. And then while we were waiting to board our ship, just gorgeous, amazing skies the whole time we were there. And we got on this boat, which was, it's kind of funny. It truly is a cruise ship. It's like a floating casino. It's a one night from Stockholm to Helsinki, totally duty-free because they stop in international waters on the way. So they make one stop so that they can claim this duty-free. And then lots of locals just go on this cruise ship. They'll go there and back over a weekend, and they drink a lot, and they eat a lot, and they buy a lot of stuff on the boat because they don't have to pay the VAT on the boat, which is typically like 25% tax. So that's what they're avoiding by doing this boat ride. So they buy tons of alcohol. And so this boat ride kind of did that. And that little stop in the middle there was the international waters that we stopped at on the way. The sun never set on this trip. But just to kind of give you an idea of what it's like to get on a boat and go out of Stockholm, it was just thousands, and this is how like all of Scandinavia is. There's just tons and tons of islands and waterways, and it's just gorgeous to look, like just to get this parallax shift as you're drifting along and kind of see all of these amazing properties and lands that are just right on the water. There's so much of it. This was as close as we got to a sunset. It actually never got darker than this, but this was at like 3 a.m. when we stopped in that little island on the way. So we arrived in Helsinki, and you go into the Helsinki port, and you go past this really cool sea fort, which is called Suomenlinna. And we ended up going to Suomenlinna after this, but just kind of as you come in, you're greeted by this really gorgeous military installation, right? And this is what was used to keep the Russians out of Finland back then. And it was actually originally started off as a Swedish-owned seaport, and then I think the Russians took it over, and then the Finnish won it back, and it had kind of definitely a interesting history. But as soon as you land in Helsinki, you can tell like this is a cool place because they have this. You can see saunas, pools, restaurant, these floating pools in the middle of the marina. Nobody was really there because it was kind of cold out, but it was really a cool thing to see, and this is all just happening right out there where all the activity is in the port. This guy was awesome. The guy on the left. This is Helsinki. Helsinki is a beautiful city. It was a wonderful city to walk around. Did a lot of walking here. And we actually hightailed it to the train station because the train station had lockers. And I just thought it was kind of beautiful to poke out into where the actual trains come in, even though we didn't get on a train here. But it was a neat place. And this train station was actually designed by Elil Saarinen, which was Eero Saarinen's father. So this is our trip to Suomenlinna, and this was built in 1748. And obviously a lot of labor went into all these stones. And I just wanted to show you some of the textures and landscapes of this amazing place. So a lot of people go to Suomenlinna on their lunch break, and they just, walk from the office over to this place and hang out here. You just take a ferry over to it. And there's some newer buildings that are integrated with the old buildings from the 17 and 1800s. They have these weird booths that I don't know what you use them for. No, these were phone booths, obviously. They just haven't got rid of them, but there's no phones in them anymore. That's my wife, captive in there. So here's some of the idea of that texture. It was just amazing to see how it's been built up over time and infilled, and something breaks and they patch it up. And there's all these different fantastic textures there. And this is just kind of what it was like to be there, just these really allergenic place. It wasn't that bad. You get to look through all these places where cannons used to sit and shoot out as boats would try to infiltrate these waters. Just really interesting. Again, more of that texture, and you can see how the windows have just been filled in over time. And okay, a little bit of wood, a little bit of brick, some stone, whatever you got, right? That's what you use here. And these are the actual seawalls. So what's interesting about this is this is the inside, but on the outside it just looks like a green hill, right? So people come charging up this hill, and then they fall into the fort and get stabbed to death. But just interesting architecturally, thinking about it as a defensible space back then. Again, just more of that kind of just add on just with whatever you've got over there, and you can tell they've come back and add some stairs and all kinds of stuff. And this is where they would keep the munitions. So this is out there near the edge where they had all the cannons, and they had these munitions barracks hidden under these giant mounds. And now it's just kind of a beautiful scene. So this is looking out kind of right past where we came in, and you can see kind of this really interesting angled space, and you can see kind of down into those portals where the cannons would fire out as people were coming in trying to attack. Again, just kind of the green roof, these are just really hidden looking, but really fun place to go explore. You could spend a couple days exploring this thing. Super, super fun. So this is back into Helsinki. Every statue had a bird crapping on it everywhere, and that was just kind of the thing. But there's lots of statues. They're definitely proud of their heritage. And one thing I really loved about it was just the music in the streets. It was a wonderful experience. So I went to a Starbucks, and I go into Starbucks, and I'm like, well, that's an interesting handle on the door. I know I've seen that before, and I didn't really think too much about it after that because I got my iced coffee that I really needed. And in Starbucks, there's even some really beautifully designed chairs and little concrete tables, and it was like, what is this place? And then we walk outside, and there's Alvar Aalto's name on the door, right? And it's like, wow, they think this is a good architect, right? Okay, so just so you guys know, he is the pride of the nation, the number one, this architect, and he's one of my favorite architects. So I thought it was super interesting that his name was on this building, and I really didn't think of this building as even possibly being something that he had done because it's all out of metal, and that really wasn't something that he did. And then we walk out and turn around, and we see that it's what's called the Academic Bookstore. This is a really famous Alvar Aalto project. And you go inside and you can see why. And it is a gorgeous, gorgeous space. So this was done in 1969. So we had no idea that we were actually at this location. It just happened to have a Starbucks plus bookstore equals cool spot. And it turned out to be one of the spots that I had listed that I was definitely going to visit. I just didn't have the wits about me at that time to figure it out. Aalto is known for bringing natural light into spaces in really amazing and inspiring ways. And I just thought that these skylights were beautiful, and they really do an amazing job of creating an environment to read under natural light. And they kind of just go throughout the space. And here, this is kind of the meta photo. I'm in the architecture section looking out over the entire bookstore. But it's a big bookstore, and it seems to be doing really well. And it's still just really gorgeous place for being 40 plus years old. So then we went to a museum where there was an Aalto exhibit. So timing was good because they don't always have that. And so this is just kind of looking out the window at some other traditional Helsinki architecture. And I just thought that was kind of a neat, the way they had aligned this museum to line up with the other one, and a totally different style at the other end of this plaza. But you probably recognize a lot of the furniture in here. What was so interesting about Aalto was getting to experience how he designed absolutely everything. He didn't just design the building. He designed the furniture, the light fixtures. He designed the sinks. This was a mock-up of a room in a sanatorium that he did. He did this giant sanatorium, and he designed the sinks so that when water was running, it wouldn't drive the other person crazy next door. So it was like a silent sink. So he really dealt with acoustics at a very personal level in his designs. He designed all the light fixtures in here. He designed the furniture, everything. It was neat to see some like original sketches of the Finnish Pavilion for the 1900 World's Fair. And this is a perspective sketch of the Finnish Pavilion, and then the fully realized version. So not too far off. And so they were really showing off what Finland had to offer. But this is like a whole wall rear projected, so it was a full height image. It was really cool to see that. Some examples of some of the light fixtures he designed, and then furniture that he designed. That chair kind of in the middle there is probably the most famous chair that he ever designed. And there's different kind of models of that chair over time. So if you ever see one of these at a yard sale, pick it up. But it was neat because he dealt with the actual like design of the manufacturing, much like the Eameses did in later years. So they would do the fabrication, the design, figure out how to do these bent wood pieces, and it was cool. And there was lots of models and drawings, and this was an upside down model of the ceiling space of a church that he did. So we go out and we're walking around. There's a Stephen Hall building, no big deal, just out in the main courtyard. But then this was kind of one of the neatest things that we got to see in Helsinki, and this is a 1971. It actually started design in 62, I think, and then it was finally finished in 71. Finlandia Hall is a theater, multiple theaters inside this, and this is kind of their Helsinki's claim to architectural fame with this building, and it was beautiful. And so I'll just show you a few photos of this space. That's the main concert space on the inside of that tall tower. Very rigorous exterior, as you can see. And just really neat kind of the way that these tiles were kind of puckering to create this basket weave effect. They're actually not the original tiles. The whole building has been reskinned with tile. It was originally, I think it was travertine marble. And, it just gets brittle over time. So it had all been replaced. But I thought they had done a nice job. And just to give you some ideas, since we're architects, of some of the details, he used a lot of warm woods whenever there's an entry involved, just to kind of invite you in and make it feel like home. These were really all of these little flutes and pipes to shade from the exterior, neat little details like that. All of these tiles were designed by him, and so he designed everything. He designed all the seating, all the lighting, all of these tiles that are used throughout his buildings. We didn't get to go in the main concert space. We did break into the building, but nobody else was in there. So we couldn't go into the main concert space because it was roped off. But this is a smaller concert space. You can see those neat clear-story windows in the upper right. And just kind of gorgeous composition and planning. You'll notice a lot in his buildings, wherever there's windows, there's trees outside. There was always this strong connection to nature with his spaces. So here you can see kind of the rain gutters coming down, and you can't even tell they're rain gutters. It's just this neat detail on the exterior of the building. And here you can really see that kind of puckering basket weave effect of these tiles. So it was really neat the way it caught the light. Here's some floor plans. You can kind of see how non-traditional this sits right along a giant grass quad area with lakes in it and stuff. So that's the hard left edge. And then the right edge really just kind of does whatever it needs to do programmatically to fill the program of the space. You can see there's several different theaters inside there. There's the main one at the bottom, there's another one in the middle, and then at the very top there's the Sibelius Concert Hall. The inaugural concert was Sibelius, the violinist, played at that inaugural concert for that building. So then we went to Aalto's studio. So this was his office. This is the space where most of his work was done, and I just thought, who does garage doors like that? It was super cool the way they were hung off those rods. But this is the studio where all these projects happened for the most part. He actually had two studios. He had a home studio that had an office in it, where after he built this studio, he would go back home to work alone, but this was his main office where he had all of his employees. And so you kind of come in this dark little entry and you come up this staircase, and then this space just opens up and it lets in all this natural light. And they still work there today. It's still a working studio. And you can see there's these weird computer screens on the desks. But the traditional stuff is still laying out for us to look at. So you can see all these cool curves and the old lamps and T-squares and Mayline type parallel bars. Here's a model of the studio itself, which was just kind of a neat 3D model that can be pulled apart. And so we're kind of in that upper left-hand volume. That's the studio. But in this studio, it also had a bunch of models of other projects. This is one that was actually never realized, but they still have the model of it. It was a place where he would invite clients in, and he would show off their project in these. I mean, this was like in the, the 60s, I guess. He had this really cool natural light display case that would have these skylights in it that would just cast a nice light, so he would present the projects to clients in there. But he also had a showroom in here, and actually there's some photos of them just working back in the day. There's a showroom inside this office. So his office, because he designed so much, he had this showroom, like going to a furniture showcase, and he would show off his furniture, and he would show off his light fixtures. So you can see there's a series of light fixtures kind of hanging over this stair, this interesting skylight blasting light down into the space. And there he is kind of just sitting there taking a call. He would have photo shoots in here. They would shoot all kinds of, you can see there's like a movie camera set up there, and they would make films about what they were doing. Very Eames-like, but earlier. More really cool models of spaces they were designing. Different examples of the way that they built table legs and chair legs. And then this is just like, this was the front door. So kind of nondescript, teak. There's a light fixture he designed. There's that door handle, once again. And he just kind of used these parts over and over throughout his designs. And this is the exterior of the space. That neat scallop at the bottom, just adding interesting details. This was an outdoor kind of amphitheater space. Then we walked over to his house. And so his house is not far away, a few blocks away. And what's interesting about his house was it was his original office. So he had like 6 employees working in his house every single day. And the house is split really up into 2 parts. You can see the dark wood part, that's the private home part. And then the white stuff is anywhere that there was a public or office space. So it was really programmatically set up to be, you could tell kind of what was what function just by looking at the materials it was made out of. So this is the entire office wing right here. And underneath the office is a sauna, because it's Finland, so sauna. You've got to have one. And all the employees would like migrate to the sauna every day, and then they would run down to the lake right there and polar bear after the sauna. This is the studio space inside of his office. So this was his functioning office for quite a while. He had 6 or 8 employees. That entire balcony upstairs also had employees packed in. It's kind of like our San Diego office. And then they all moved to that other building that they built, and then he would come back here and work when he needed to get stuff done. So it became his private office after they built the other studio. And They had lots and lots of famous people come over. They had a grand piano. They were very much into the arts. You can see it has all of his furniture. So his house was also a showroom, much like his office was. It was really difficult to get this photo when there were 40 other people on the tour with us. But I was strong, and I got it done. People don't belong in architectural photos. I just took a picture of this bed. This was interesting, like built-in bed, kind of interesting, small, twin size. The reason that this bed is built in is because underneath it, and the reason this bed is so high, is because when you come up the stairs to get up to the upstairs, you actually occupy that space with your head as you're walking underneath. So just like an interesting way to kind of divide space up in 3D. Really, really fun kind of experience. The bedrooms were small, but very warm. You can see here that this building is actually interesting in that it is a steel structure building with like wood curtain wall. So that was really ahead of its time for a residence. So you see that column in the middle of the room there. And there's some more columns here on the outside. This is a roof terrace. And you can even see the planters are the shape of his famous glass vase. Here you can really see that residential, private component, and then the white stuff is completely grown over there on the left, but just a beautiful setting. So then my wife and I got picked up by my friend who I used to play in a band with. He now lives in Finland. He married a Finnish girl. They inherited a 250-year-old farm from her parents. And so we got to stay in Finland for free, which was super cool. And we got to experience this amazing place. This was actually probably my favorite part of the whole trip. So I got to see his kids, and they were super cute. And we got to experience some real food and not just living out of the grocery store. We got to see this chapel that her father built by himself by hand one summer on their 20-acre farm. It was just gorgeous. So he just obviously sourced all the trees right there and built this amazing place. And he has this guest book, and they're like, "Please sign the guest book. He would love it if you signed the guest book." Right? It was just this was his pride and joy. This was something that obviously he built by hand. But they have right down the street from their aunt and uncle, where they have goats and beautiful places to hike and look out over the countryside. And just a beautiful, beautiful place to live. There's their son. So really neat to be away from the city for a while and just experience this super beautiful nature and basically on a self-performing farm, live on it for a little bit. After that, we flew over to Bergen. So this was a quick flight through Oslo. It's kind of funny, you can't get a direct flight, but super cheap flights when you're flying between Scandinavian countries and a lot of European countries, actually. So for about $100 a person, you can do this kind of flying around. So we went to the west coast of Norway to Bergen, and Bergen is a very old city. This was our view from our Airbnb. We were on a rooftop. It was incredible. Had no idea it was going to be like that until we got there. So we just got super lucky. And this was the inside. So like this beautiful modern apartment with a roof deck. Couldn't go wrong. And then just some of the views from that over the city. And you can just see the character of these cities, and they've been built up over time. This city is a very green city, and we immediately hiked to the first Stave church we could find. This one was originally built in 1150. We could have gone in it, but we didn't. But it was actually almost no Stave churches in Norway are original anymore. They were all like started somewhere else and then lit on fire and then rebuilt and moved, sometimes multiple times. So it's a really interesting history. It's also hard to find an original Stave church anywhere. But the detail on these is incredible. You can see the roof, all these different decorations that are on it, and like look at these shingles. They're incredible. Okay, so this is called Bryggen. This is actually right down on the marina in Bergen, and this is, you can see, from 1070 originally. This place has burned down so many times and been rebuilt, but they claim that the original structure still holds it all up. So it's really an interesting place. What's funny about this picture is you can see kind of red, yellow, and then red beige. The red beige ones are just graphics of buildings. They're just printed on this facade that's rolled in front because they're redoing them behind it. But they didn't want to mess up my photo, so they did this. And it's just a really cool place to kind of go explore. And in between these buildings, it's like these really narrow alleyways. And you walk up to the wood, and it's squishy, like it's wet and squishy. And so you can just tell, like, yeah, this place gets a lot of moisture. You can see why it's just constantly being rebuilt, patched up, replaced. But really neat. You can see like this portico that they probably had like a pulley with a rope, and they would pull stuff up into there and shove it into the attic of this building to take deliveries, and just a lot of neat culture here. I love that column in the background. It's a tree, right? You can see the branch coming out, and then they put the diagonal in to hold it up after, I'm sure, like way later. This is the fish market. You can actually get whale salami here. That was kind of interesting. But fish markets are not a big thing over there. They actually don't source a lot of seafood, it seems like. So most people love hot dogs over there. Like, that's the main food, is hot dogs. You can get them everywhere. There's hot dog stands at every gas station, out in the open, everywhere. They love the hot dogs. So here's the funicular. It's called the Flydalsjuvet, and you queue up forever to get into this tiny little space, and you're just constantly thinking like, oh crap, if it catches on fire, we're all going to die because there's no way out. And there's tons and tons of people, and we're going to get trampled. But luckily, the train comes back down the hill, and basically what happens is you get on this thing, and I like tried to get the window seat so I could shoot this video. And it was just super cool because you're going up like a 45-degree slope. Not this fast, but just amazing. Totally worth doing. Super fun. And you get to the top of the hill, and then there's this amazing nature park up there. This is what the car looks like. It's kind of shaped ergonomically to fit the hill. It's like theater seating inside. So once you get up to the top, you can kind of, even their iconography is very slanted. It's italicized. But they've got all these signs, so you can see it, how far it is to the South Pole or Rome or Madrid. And you can see the cruise ships in the background. And this is what it's like to stand on top of the world in Norway. It's just gorgeous. And again, all these islands and inlets and then that city down there that's just been built on top of itself so many times. So this is there's a bunch of goats up there. Like, I don't know what this goat's name was, but there was a black goat, and its name was Obama. They actually had the names on the goats. It was pretty funny. So Norwegians like Obama. They love those goats, man. Those goats were very pampered. But this is that nature park on the top. Just beautiful. A lot of people go backpacking up here. There was a wonderful children's park up here. And there's all of these trolls, like, everywhere. Kind of, and they're all carved out of wood, and they're all painted, and they're well taken care of, and they're everywhere. And it's just like this thing that they do there. It's like a cultural thing. They're good luck. The trolls are all good luck. This is a hike. We walked down, and this is an amazing, like, I'm just standing on the trail looking down, taking this picture. I'm not flying a drone here. This is just really cool to look down on the city. Again, very European city that's been built up over the years. And just amazing landscape all the way down. And as you get closer and closer to the city, you're getting closer and closer to the rooftops, and you're looking down there like, how is that even possible? How have they decided to build all these? And it's just like, you can tell, like, they walk out there and they just figure it out as they go. There's no, like, BIM model of this stuff, right? This is the Armadillo bike shop. I just thought it was cool. Again, lots of public art on the side of buildings. So then we got on a boat and we went up to the fjords. So this is why you're all here, to see the fjords. And so just to kind of give you an idea of the path that we went to get into the middle of Norway, where all the other little stars are. This is a really cool boat ride, really smooth, really fast, and you get to see some amazing scenery on the way. And I definitely recommend this over taking a train up to that area because you get to experience stuff that you normally wouldn't get to see. And then there's just like these insane waterfalls coming down, and yeah, that's just someone's house right there, right? That's where they live all the time, and I live here. We got to Sogndal, which is up in that inland area, and Sogndal was a really cool town. Again, you can kind of just see how things have been patched over time. Like, we don't get rid of buildings here. We don't bulldoze buildings to make new buildings. We just fix it, and it was kind of cool to see that and experience that firsthand. From there, we took a bus ride up to Geiranger, which is like a UNESCO World Heritage fjord. And I forgot to include a picture, but the tunnel system, like the Norwegians are the tunnel gods. There were the longest tunnels you've ever seen. Like, there was a tunnel we went in, it was 35 minutes in a tunnel. Like, they're insane, like 7 kilometers long. They're just crazy. But when you pop out of one, you get to see like this really awesome glacial carved fjords. And this is really like the reason we went to Norway, was to see this stuff. And the water is just, well, at least when we were there, because we brought all the awesome weather with us, it was just perfect, clear water, like mirrors. And like Yosemite, but full of water. You kind of see me in the reflection there, shooting a photo. I'm shooting out of a bus window. Again, with the waterfalls, Norway. Just beautiful, beautiful scenery the whole way. This is like a tidal wave of rock. And there's a little house down there. See that? It's awesome. This is actually just a lake. This is not a fjord, but a lake at the top of one of the hills. So we're getting up into the snow country. Again, no trees up here. And just glacier water. Amazing, gorgeous glacier water. Super cold. And then these roads. These roads are insanity, especially when you're in a bus. Like, here's an example. That bus was like 3 inches away from us. There's no passing here. It's insane. It was really cool to kind of drive on these super windy hairpin roads, and there's a hairpin for you. These little houses with green roofs built out in the middle of nowhere. And like, yeah, that's my farm. So this is coming down into the Geiranger Fjord, and just gorgeous, gorgeous place. This is a very photogenic place. I did not take this picture off the internet. This is my own. Super cool place to kind of come down and eat lunch at the bottom of this fjord. And we hiked up to visit like their cultural museum. And you walk up, just to give you an idea of where we are in Norway right now. We're that's as north as we get. You can go way, way up north. It would take you a few days to get up there because all the roads do this crazy windiness. But this hike we went on was called the Seven Falls, or the Seven Sisters Falls. Just really beautiful, and the way that they integrate into the landscape with their walkways and bridges, and they really want you to experience it. It was awesome. So this is their museum. It just kind of hovers out over that glacial river. And I don't know if you can really see up there, but like the water is just translucent. It was gorgeous. A lot of powerful water there. Here's another crazy road on our way back out of there. And then we stayed in this town called Loen. And Loen, again, with an Airbnb we got here. This is like 10 o'clock at night. And this is a lake, but it's just, the water's just flowing right out of it. Like, it's not captured. There's just that much water. And so as I kind of pan down, it's kind of hard to see in here, but it's perfectly clear. You can see to the bottom. There's just perfect clarity to the water there. It was awesome. And this is, again, just like 11 o'clock at night. Just amazing light out. Photographer's dream. Just gorgeous place. This was the view from our Airbnb. Like, someone lives here. That's their morning view every single day as they eat breakfast. This is down at the water, and you can kind of see at the very, very top is where we're headed. And this is called the Loen Skylift. And the Loen Skylift is a cable car, and you pay $60 a person to go up this thing, but you're in Norway, so you do it. And you go all the way to the top, and this is it's like a 5-minute ride for $60 per person. And
is that one way or
two ways? Yeah. You could walk back down, or maybe base jump. But I just thought it was really cool. We're glad we did it. It was definitely worth doing. It's such a big deal that the King and Queen of Norway came for the first ride on it, and like that's a big deal, right? When the King and Queen come to open up a new thing. So just ride it up to the top, and you can see the building kind of appearing there on the left as we come up over this crazy structure right here to capture us. And this is pretty new. It had opened like a few months before we got there. But once you're up there, it's like nothing else. You can see 3 fjords from this one spot. So here we are. And that's that lake that I shot the glacial water coming out of. But this is the panorama from the top, and it's incredible up there. There was a little bit of snow, but just a gorgeous day, perfect weather, a little chilly, but you're hiking around. It was a fun hike. My wife says it was a hellacious hike. That's what we think about hiking. I like it. But just these awesome trail systems all connecting together, and the 3 fjords all from one vantage point. Lots of these cool trail markers, because it actually is really hard to see the trail. It's just all like this one color up there. That thing looks like it's like a monster that's going to kill you. This is actually looking straight down from that deck. It just hangs out over the face of that rock. So super wide angle lens here. And it's just neat architecture, really fun. Here's my GoPro mounted to capture the trip down. And so going down is a little different than going up, especially when you're with a group of people. Because when you get right about here, everyone goes, whoa! And they all lose their stomachs. And then you come flying down all the way to the bottom. And you kind of land back down on this lake into the glacier water. It was super freezing cold, like 40-degree water probably. Just another sweet Norwegian vehicle here. Some dude came driving up in this thing. So we got back on the boat, and we went from Sogndal back all the way down south to Flom. And Flom is a really old city. And along the way, I just thought, you know, they're right. Location is everything. You see those little houses up there? And there's like 3 waterfalls flowing around them. Here's another view of another like horsetail fall right there in the middle on the edge of this fjord. Incredible, incredible real estate. And this is landing in Flom. So Flom is, this was a guest house we stayed at right at the mouth of the fjord. Norwegian flags are very popular everywhere in Norway, but you'll see them in a lot of my photos. Really interesting. All of the lights, because everything's so old, like everything was built before electricity, so all the light fixture, all the electrical is run on the outside of the walls. Thought that was kind of interesting. Everybody has this exact same shower head everywhere. It's always the one you can take off, and like they're very practical there in Norway. Some more exterior. And then all the stairs are like this. They're all this style of stair. Everywhere that you go, you can see the style of stair. And I just thought this was a really interesting column detail. It looks like that. That's how you hold up stuff in Norway. You use one piece of rebar. And I'm like, that can't be right. Like, they're going to come back in. And everywhere I went, I saw this. Thought it was really weird. So we hiked up above Flom. Just a beautiful place to stay. Really cool, sweet boats. Gnarly barbed wire. But this was like home base for a day. It was awesome. Really beautiful place. You get on these ferries where the nose opens up, and we went to cruise through another UNESCO World Heritage Fjord. And you can kind of see waterfalls on the left. This is the boat that we were on. Like, people live there. I don't know why. So awesome. There's Zaha's boat. It was a cool boat. You just walk up all the ramps, get to the top. So this is like a live GPS shot. So we're like right at the peak of where the World Heritage Fjord comes back into the main fjord. And our goal here was to get to Undredal, which is where we went to do a little cheese tasting, because this town is known for its cheese. Jason Meeks told me about this place. He said it was awesome. So we decided to book this little tour to there. But on the way, I mean, we got to go through Fantasy Island. Just a beautiful cruise on the way to Undredal. And the sky was incredible. There was this boat going by, and like the birds just follow the boats. It's pretty funny because when we started, all the birds were with our boat. And then this other boat comes the other way, and all the birds go over to the other boat and start chasing it back, just looking for food. So this is Undredal, and this is an incredible place. Not very many people live here, and I think they like it like that because they're really protective of this town, and it's a really beautiful place. So we got off the boat, and I mean, it's just so picturesque and amazing right from the dock. And you walk up, and we did the tour to get to a Stave church up here, and you kind of see some old houses that are falling apart, but still awesome to take photos of. I'm going to spec these doorknobs next. Super cool. They're all these flat bar style doorknobs there. They don't have any round doorknobs. This is the sweetest Dutch door I've ever seen. So we went to the Stave Church that's in Undredal. Now this is the oldest building that I went in on my trip. So 870 years old. And so obviously they're very protective of this Stave Church, but we did get to go inside, and it is incredible. Incredible inside. I mean, just the history is on the walls here. And everything is symbology. It's all symbols for something that's happened over time, and you can see there's lots of, like there's sayings painted, and obviously, there's like angels and goblins on the roof, and, everything's painted on, and like here's an example of one of the walls, and you can just see this incredible patina, things that used to be on the wall that are no longer there. They don't go back and try to patch it up or anything. They just left it. And here on the kind of the upper right, you can see a small cross, and that cross was engraved into every wall of the church, and that says north, south, east, west. It was really just little things that got pointed out to us as we were in there. This is down at the water's edge. Bryggen means dock, right? So this is the dock, and if you want someone to stop, you better turn the light on, or the boat's not going to stop and pick you up. I just thought that was hilarious. They don't stop there normally. So this is where we did some cheese tasting, and you can see that brown cheese. That's actually cheese. It's not chocolate, and it's they're famous for this cheese. It's okay. It's not, but it's worth stopping for. They have their own goats. It's a family thing. It's been there forever, but it was really fun to stop, and they have goat salami there because it's all goats. It's all goat cheese. And then just kind of while we're hanging out eating cheese, and you just get to watch this happen. It was awesome. So then we got on a train and went up the mountain, and you go through this incredible valley with this river running down, and can you see it? There's like right in the middle, there's like a 300-foot tall waterfall. And it was just a wonderful train ride. You know, open up the windows. You can see that road. Imagine building that road by hand, like when it was built. It's just incredible. And with those waterfalls coming down next to it, it was amazing. And then we stopped. They had to put on this little production. It was awesome. This woman, she would dance, and they had this giant speaker system, and this waterfalls coming down, and it was very like Viking. It was awesome. Yeah, that's someone's house right there. It's incredible. Lots of snow-covered canopies for the train to get through in the winter. And, you know, just people's houses again. It never cease to amaze me where people chose to kind of sit down and make their place. It was awesome. So we got on another train and went to Oslo from this location. So Myrdal is kind of at the very edge of the fjords up there. And then we took a train ride down to Oslo. It took about 7 hours or so. Again, it just never gets dark, so you're not going to miss anything. And incredible landscapes the entire way. When we arrived in Oslo, we checked into our hotel, which we had this amazing view over the city. I set up a couple cameras, like precariously hanging out of the window, and shot a time lapse of the sun moving across the sky. And this is kind of indicative of how it worked there. The sun rarely sets, but it was just super cool. You can see this really neat ski jump off on the mountain side. So, you know, it's winter. That's what they do there. They do that crazy ski jump. It's awesome. We didn't make it up there. We went into this church here, and you can kind of, if you look back through, these are all the different dates. So this church started in 1697. So not as old as the 1170, right? But it's pretty old. And again, just an incredible space. The churches are incredible. We walked, I love this dude playing down here. He was awesome. Walked through the city on our way over to the Opera House, and there was just some neat kind of, this was like a sustainable showcase. You could just come and plug your phone in here, running off of solar power to get a charge if you wanted to, and get information about the city. And they just had these neat little structures. They're building a lot down on the waterfront. But this was an incredible spot. The Oslo Opera House by Snøhetta was an incredible building. You walk on it. I think that's one of the things that's so attractive about it, is you just get to go wherever you want. You get up and it has these really articulated siding tiles. It's all built out of marble with various textures and steps, and just gorgeous. This is from the roof looking down. There's a little kid down there posing for photos. And then as you're walking back kind of down from the upper roof, you start to get a glimpse of what's going on the inside. So you look through the window and you see this really warm, inviting, textured forms on the inside of the building. And when you get down into there, you start to come in, and it's just an amazing space. And this is just like the lobby, right? And with these really cool generative designed panels that wrap restrooms, and they've got LED lights in them, and spare no expense. But a beautiful spot, for sure. And this is it from as we're walking away. And you can just see how many people it attracts. And it's like a glacier sitting on the edge of a fjord. It's just an amazing building. They're so proud of it. This is a cool little floating sauna that I think was probably had like 40 hippies inside of it. We walked over to the castle, and this is an amazing spot as well. Tons and tons of texture. Just things built on top of other things, and lots of tiles and rocks and bricks and everything. Tons of pattern. Just incredible stuff. This is where the king and king of Norway are actually buried. And it has an incredible history. From there, we went out to the Cultural Museum, and on the way, you pass this architecture that's amazing. Just really neat how it engages people everywhere in the city. Lots of neat buildings and texture. Cool vehicles. This is a Viking ship museum. That's a real Viking ship. They dug it out of a mound out of the ground because the Vikings buried their ships when they stopped using them. That car's awesome. So we got to the Cultural History Museum, and this museum is not really a museum. It's like 100 acres, and it has got all of these buildings that have been moved from various places within Norway to this location to be preserved. And so there was just a lot of cultural stuff going on here. They had it all set up, and as they were originally, the entire history of Norway is in this location. You can see all the roof built up on top of itself. These buildings. Here's a stave church that has been moved. It was originally built in 1157. I'm not sure exactly when they moved it here, but it was beautiful. You kind of see the inside. No lighting, obviously, so long exposure here to capture the interior of the space. And just other cultural icons of Norway, so obviously they obviously like Aalto as well. And there's a Fender guitar in there. But they had this 3-story apartment building, and every room was set up as a different era. And so it was just really neat to kind of see how they displayed their culture. This is in Oslo, going towards the castle, and this is a sculpture park. This is probably one of the biggest attractions in Oslo, where they have these incredible bronze sculptures everywhere, and just really amazing ornament. This tower is all these crazy, entangled figures of people. And it's just gorgeous there. And the city itself is just built on top of it forever. It's amazing to look at. Lots of texture. That's City Hall. So then we got on a train and went to Sweden, back to Stockholm, where we ended our trip. And home of IKEA. Had to go. First stop was IKEA. We had to get souvenirs. What was so funny was we found all these really cool IKEA souvenirs, and we came home and we went to IKEA, and they had them here too. So I found out about this actually late in the game, and we went to this church. And it's designed by Sigurd Lorentz, and he was a famous Swedish architect, one of the most famous. And I just love the details of this church. I mean, there is as much mortar as there is brick in this, and it's really a beautiful texture. Just the way that he integrated these materials, I thought was really beautiful. And it's been there a very long time, but just beautiful, beautiful building. We then went to Woodland Cemetery, and Woodland Cemetery is an enormous cemetery in the kind of north of Stockholm proper, where they have some wonderful architecture, and it's just immense. It's like the most beautiful cemetery I've ever been to. These are actually cremation smokestacks, but I just thought it looked really cool. That's the crematorium. But it is very much a woodland cemetery. I mean, as people are buried in the woods, and you walk through the woods, and you get to see all this really interesting, you get to see there's so many of the same names. I mean, it really is like everybody who, there's only a few names from Norway, and they're there. That's Greta Garbo's resting spot right there. But interesting buildings by Sigurd Lorentz and another architect. Just really fun place to go explore. We then went to the old town area of Stockholm on our way back into the city. So Gamlestan is the old city center. And really very European, very tight alleyways, lots of people just hanging out on tables and eating and drinking, and it was really a fun spot to go. You hear that? Sticky sidewalk. It was really gross. That's from the trees. Like just the trees just drop this stickiness. That's pretty funny.
Evan?
Yeah.
So sorry to interrupt.
You got to kick us out?
There's a meeting in here at 1:30.
Okay. I'm almost done. We'll be done in 2 minutes. So the final spot here in Sweden, we were just kind of walking around. We walked so much this day and saw a bunch of really cool stuff. Really neat architecture in the city. You can kind of see the contrast, old and new, right there. Just beautiful contrast. And then we flew back to Iceland just for a quick layover. And we got back on the plane, and there's this creepy lady looking at my camera. And what was so cool about the flight back, and we weren't really expecting this, was that we flew right over Greenland. And it never got dark on the way home. So on the way there, we flew there, and we kind of followed the night, and it was dark the whole time. But on the way back, it was light the whole time, which makes it hard to sleep. But we got to fly over this. And just kind of as an ending few shots here, it was incredible to see Greenland out of a plane window. It was like this. It's like a kid you're getting to see something amazing all of a sudden because it's such a long flight, and to look down on this immense, uninhabited for the most part, continent. It was really cool. So just kind of flying over the western edge of Greenland here, it's like we were in space, just flying over this amazing place. And we got back to LA, and it was sunset, and it was just really pretty outside. And you can kind of make out LA in this brown air. And that's what we came back to. So that's my Xref.